Trump's White House has kicked the AP out of the White House press pool covering the president over a name change. The AP tried to get the White House's decision reversed by taking the administration to court and lost. Well, at least for now. Welcome to Newspeak, I'm Kellum. You may have heard about Trump's feud with the Associated Press over the Gulf of Mexico, which President Trump renamed to the Gulf of America. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what happened and what this means for the White House press corps. So, in Trump's first week in office, he signed executive orders that changed the name of two places. One was the Gulf of Mexico, which, as I said, he changed to the Gulf of America. The other was Mount Denali in Alaska, which he changed to Mount McKinley. Now, the AP put out a style guide note on this, saying all references to Mount Denali should now be referred to as Mount McKinley. But on first reference, the AP will use the Gulf of Mexico instead of the Gulf of America, and then add a note explaining that the US has a different name for it. Now, you may think that it has something to do with the age of these names. This body of water has been called the Gulf of Mexico for something like 400 years. This mountain in Alaska was only renamed to Mount Denali by President Obama in 2015. The AP says it has nothing to do with the age, though, and everything to do with who has the right to change names. For Mount McKinley, that's squarely within the president's authority to rename because it's on US soil. But the Gulf of Mexico, or America, is mostly an international water, so it's not up to the US president alone to decide the name. The AP compared it to the Gulf of California, which Mexico calls the Sea of Cortez. I couldn't find the usage of either on the AP website, but it says it uses both names when referring to that body of water, just not in tweets, apparently. Because of its refusal to use the Gulf of America, the White House kicked the AP out of the exclusive White House press pool.
We're going to keep them out until such time as they agree that it's the Gulf of America.
So here's what this means for the AP. It can still cover the president from the White House, such as attending the press briefings in the James Brady press briefing room. It can still catch officials going in and out of the White House and President Trump as he gets on Marine One, the president's helicopter. But what it can't do now is be part of the White House press pool, which is an exclusive group of journalists who follow the president around, such as when he travels or in small spaces like the Oval Office, where the whole White House press corps couldn't fit. Usually there's a TV, print, and radio representative that is part of each pool. So for example, if Fox is the TV pooler one day, CNN or NBC might be the TV pooler the day after. So that's what the AP was kicked out of. The AP brought the matter to court, saying it infringes on the AP's constitutional protections. But the judge in the case sided with the White House by refusing to grant an emergency stay to the order. The White House, of course, took a victory lap over the news.
Asking the President of the United States questions in limited spaces, such as the Oval Office and Air Force One, is a privilege that unfortunately has only been granted to a few. It is not a legal right for all.
However, the case isn't fully settled. There's a court date set for March 20th where the judge will hear both sides' arguments. And since then, HuffPost, which used to be called the Huffington Post, and Reuters have also been removed from the pool rotation. HuffPost wrote that its White House reporter, SV Date, was set to fill the spot typically reserved for a print reporter in the pool. But after 10 p.m. on Tuesday night, the White House informed Date there was no room for him in the pool. A reporter from Axios, a digital publication famous for its extreme commitment to brevity, is instead serving as the print pooler. Reuters reported on Wednesday that 3 reporters from Reuters, HuffPost, and Der Tagesspiegel, a German newspaper, were barred from attending Trump's first cabinet meeting. TV crews from ABC and Newsmax, along with correspondents from Axios, The Blaze, Bloomberg News, and NPR, were permitted to cover the event. Now, the backdrop to all this is the way that the White House is shaking up access to the president. Traditionally, who could travel in the White House press pool was decided by the White House Correspondents' Association, or WHCA. WHCA is an organization of journalists who cover the White House. Journalists vote for all its members, and its executive board decides who can be part of the White House press pool. The WHCA said in a statement that it was created to ensure that journalists who cover the president get to decide amongst themselves how these rotations are operated so as to ensure consistent professional standards and fairness in access on behalf of all readers, viewers, and listeners. Here is the WHCA president, Eugene Daniels, who's a White House correspondent for Politico.
For nearly a century, the WHCA, the White House Correspondents Association, has created a professional standards for format, length, accuracy, most importantly for the American people, and they could trust that those standards created by the folks that actually do the work were understood by everyone. You could trust the documents and the reports that were coming out of that. That it can no longer be trusted, frankly, because at the end of the day, the standards will be created by the folks that are being covered.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said on Tuesday that by taking over the WHCA's job, she was restoring the power back to the people because Trump was democratically elected by a majority of Americans.
Legacy outlets who have participated in the press pool for decades will still be allowed to join, fear not, but we will also be offering the privilege to well-deserving outlets who have never been allowed to share in this awesome responsibility. Just like we added a new media seat in this briefing room, legacy media outlets who have been here for years will still participate in the pool. But new voices are going to be welcomed in as well.
Now, I will say that it doesn't look good to have the president messing with the press coverage of him, but if you're a conservative in the US who is sick of liberal mainstream media setting the news agenda, this probably comes as very welcome news. Here's Ben Shapiro, the co-founder of the Daily Wire, a conservative news site.
When it comes to the White House Correspondents Association, they're not going to allow the Daily Wire to be part of the press pool. Not going to allow Daily Caller or Breitbart to be part of the press pool. Not going to allow the Free Beacon or the Examiner to be part of the press pool. The only people they will allow are legacy media outlets that hate President Trump.
Now, Ben Shapiro apparently didn't actually check who was allowed to be part of the press pool because when I was a member of the WHCA circa 2019, both the Daily Caller and the Washington Examiner were part of the press pool. There were some other conservative outlets as well, such as Roll Call and Real Clear Politics, the Christian Science Monitor, and the Washington Times. But he has a point. The WHCA is invariably controlled by liberals, at least the majority of the time. And that's simply because most of the mainstream media is liberal. When that's the constituency that's voting, there's bound to be a liberal bias. So was this a smart move on Trump's part? Well, for those who like to think of him as a dictator, this fits pretty nicely into that narrative. As a journalist, it's always unnerving to think of the officials you cover having more power over you, but it's also poking through the delusion that journalists have any sort of right to access the people they cover. Yes, the First Amendment grants protections to the press very broadly, but access to government has always been at the permission of government, which is one of those very uncomfortable realities that journalists don't like to talk about. That became very clear when the White House revoked the press pass of CNN reporter Jim Acosta. He had refused to hand over a microphone at a press conference with Trump, and the White House banned him even entering the White House because of it. A judge later ruled that the White House couldn't do that without having a clear code of conduct for journalists, but the judge didn't rule that the White House couldn't remove journalists. I do think the White House's commitment to expanding the kinds of journalists who cover the president is good. As Caroline Leavitt said, the media landscape is changing, and the press that covers the White House should reflect that. And who knows, maybe if more conservative media had covered President Biden, his cognitive decline wouldn't have been kept under wraps for so long. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Once again, I'm Holly Kellum, and you're watching Newspeak.